It was a late November night in 2016, one of those nights where the air itself feels heavier than usual, and silence hangs so thick it almost has a sound of its own. I was a college student at the time, working part-time at a small cafe downtown to make ends meet. That night, my shift ended later than usual, and I missed the second-to-last bus. I remember being annoyed about it at first, but then I thought, it's fine. The last one comes around midnight. I'll just catch that. By the time I reached the bus stop, the streets were dead. The only thing breaking the darkness was the faint yellow glow of the street lamp above me, buzzing every so often like it was struggling to stay alive. The cold cut straight through my jacket, sharp enough to sting my cheeks, and every breath I took came out in a ghostly puff of mist that vanished into the night. I sat on the icy metal bench, scrolling absently through my phone to distract myself from how quiet everything was. Normally, there would be at least a car or two passing every few minutes, or some drunk students stumbling home from the bars nearby. But that night, nothing. No cars, no people, just me, the cold, and that broken street lamp humming above. That's when I noticed movement across the street. At first, I thought maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me. But no, under another streetlight, standing perfectly still, was a tall figure. A man. He wasn't walking, wasn't moving. He was just there, standing, facing me. Something about him felt immediately wrong, though I couldn't have said why. Maybe it was the way the shadows clung to his hood, hiding his face completely. Or maybe it was the way he seemed too still, not shifting his weight, not fumbling with phone, not even looking around. Just fixed it for me. I tried to brush it off. Maybe he's just waiting for someone too. But then, as if sensing that I was looking at him, his head tilted ever so slightly. And when I glanced away, pretending to check the time on my phone, I could feel it, his head following me, watching. A cold shiver ran down my back. I told myself not to overthink. People wait for buses all the time. He was just another late-night commuter. But the seconds dragged on, and my nerves wouldn't settle. Then he moved. Slowly, he stepped off the curb and crossed the street. The sound of his footsteps echoed unnaturally loud against the empty sidewalk. Each step is deliberate, slow, heavy. My heart rate spiked. I sat frozen on the bench, my fingers tightening around my phone like it was some kind of weapon. He stopped about 20 feet away, just close enough for me to feel his presence, but not close enough to make a clear move. Then he tilted his head again, and in the most unsettling voice I've ever heard, he said, "Cold night, isn't it?" His voice was calm, but there was something off in the tone, like he was trying too hard to sound casual. I forced a nervous laugh and nodded, trying not to make eye contact. Yeah, pretty cold. I kept my eyes fixed on the dark road ahead, silently begging for the faint glow of bus headlights to appear. The man chuckled softly. It wasn't the kind of laugh someone makes at a joke. It was low, quiet, and almost himself, the kind of sound someone makes when they already know something you don't. He took another step closer. "Buses don't run this late," he said, his voice dropping lower. "You know that, right?" My stomach dropped. That wasn't true. I'd taken this exact bus dozens of times at this exact hour. He was lying. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Yeah, they do. It should be here any minute." For a moment, he didn't respond. He just stood there, silent, as if weighing my words. Then his hand moved. Slowly, deliberately, he slipped it into his coat pocket. Every muscle in my body tensed. My brain screamed at me to run, but my legs refused to move. My mouth went dry, my chest tight. Was he reaching for a phone, a wallet, or something much worse? I was seconds away from bolting when the sound of an engine broke through the silence. Headlights appeared at the far end of the street. The bus. Relief washed over me, but it didn't last, because the moment those headlights appeared, the man turned. Without a word, without a glance back, he walked away. His footsteps faded into the shadows, as if he'd never been there at all. I didn't wait. As soon as the bus pulled up, I scrambled inside, my hands shaking as I tapped my fare. The driver gave me a curious look, probably wondering why I looked so pale, but I just rushed a seat near the back, pressing myself against the window. As the bus pulled away, I glanced outside, scanning the darkness for him, but he was gone, completely gone. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was out there, somewhere in the shadows, watching. The rest of the ride, my nerves were on fire. Every stop, every time the doors hissed open, I half expected him to climb on. I couldn't stop replaying his words in my head. Buses don't run this late. The way he said it, so certain, like he wanted me to believe I was stranded, stuck there with him. To this day, I don't know if he was trying to rob me or worse, but I still wonder what was in his pocket. And the thought that unsettles me most, what if the bus hadn't come right then? It was the fall of 2019, and I remember the night vividly because of how ordinary it started. I had been at my girlfriend's apartment, a few towns over from where I lived, and we lost track of time. By the time I got into my car, it was already close to midnight. She offered to let me crash at her place, but I had work the next morning, and I hated waking up in other people's homes when I had things to do. So, against my better judgment, I decided to make the 40-minute drive back home. At first, the roads weren't so bad. The main highway was lit, and I had music playing low just to keep me awake. But about 20 minutes in, my GPS started acting up. I figured it was just spotty service. I was in a kind of rural area. The voice directions froze, then the screen showed me off the highlighted route. That's when I noticed I had taken the wrong exit. Great. I muttered to myself, trying to reroute manually. I turned down what I thought would be a shortcut, but the further I drove, the darker it got. Street lights disappeared. The asphalt road narrowed, then turned into cracked pavement, then eventually into a dirt road that looked more like a trail. I should have turned back immediately, but I didn't, partly out of stubbornness, partly out of the thought, it'll connect back eventually. The woods on either side seemed to swallow the car. My headlights barely cut through the darkness. The trees leaned in, branches arching overhead like skeletal fingers. My tires crunched over loose gravel. Every sound amplified in the silence. I was debating turning around when I saw something up ahead. At first, it was just a shape, a tall silhouette standing right in the middle of the road. I hit the brakes, the screech breaking the silence. My heart jumped into my throat as the headlights illuminated him fully. It was a man. He looked disheveled, clothes dirty and hanging loose, hair a tangled mess. His face was hard to make out, shadowed and pale, but I could tell he was staring directly at me. I waited for him to move, maybe wave for help, but he didn't. He just stood there. The silence was unbearable. I rolled the window down a crack and called out, "Hey, are you okay?" No response, not even a twitch. I honked my horn, short and sharp, trying to get him to snap out of whatever daze he was in. Still nothing. Instead, after a long pause, he slowly raised one arm. His hand trembled as he pointed directly at me. Not in my car, not past me, at me. A shiver went straight down my spine. I felt trapped. If I reversed, I'd have to back down a long stretch of dark woods. If I went forward, I'd have to get close to him. I told myself maybe he was drunk, maybe high, maybe he needed help. But something in my gut screamed at me, "Do not get out of this car." I shifted into reverse, my hands shaking. That's when I saw them. In the rear view mirror, half hidden in the trees, were 3 more figures. They weren't moving, just standing among the trunks, watching. My vision tunneled. My foot hit the gas. The car jolted backward too fast. Tires spitting gravel, my headlights swinging wildly across the trees. I nearly lost control before slamming into the car and swerving around the man in the road. I swear I almost clipped him. He didn't flinch, didn't move at all, just kept that arm raised, finger pointing at me. I floored it. The dirt road felt endless, my hands locked on the steering wheel, my breathing ragged. The whole time, I kept glancing in the mirrors, half expecting to see those figures chasing, sprinting behind me in the beams of my taillights. But there was nothing, just endless woods. Finally, the dirt gave way to pavement again. The relief was immediate, but it didn't erase the sick feeling crawling up my spine. I didn't slow down until I was back on a lit main road. When I got home, I locked the doors. Every light was on in the house. My body wouldn't stop trembling. The next morning, in the daylight, I checked my GPS history. The road I had been on didn't exist. According to map, I had been driving in an empty patch of woods. I've thought about it 1,000 times since. Who were those people? Why were they waiting there? And the part that keeps me up at night, when the first man pointed at me, how could he see me clearly through my windshield with the headlights blinding him? It felt less like he was pointing at me and more like he was choosing me. I lived alone in a small, one-bedroom apartment in the city back in 2018. It wasn't the nicest part of town, but it was affordable, and as a college student fresh out on my own, that was what mattered most. The building was old, creaky floors, thin walls, and a faint smell of dust and cigarette smoke that never really went away. At night, the halls were the worst. The overhead lights would flicker, and sometimes you'd hear footsteps above you, even though no one lived on the floor above. I always tried to brush it off as old building noises, but deep down, I never felt completely safe there. Still, it was mine, my space, my escape, and most nights, I convinced myself that the uneasiness was just my imagination running wild. This night started no differently. I had been up late cramming for a midterm, fueled by cheap coffee and stale instant noodles. Around 2 a.m, I finally shut my laptop, rubbed my burning eyes, and collapsed into bed. That's when I heard it. At first, it was faint, a subtle, scratchy noise, like nails dragging slowly across wood. My groggy brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe a mouse on the walls, maybe pipes. But as I lay there listening, it grew clearer. The sound wasn't coming from the walls. It was coming from my front door. I sat up, adrenaline wiping away my exhaustion. My apartment was small, so the front door wasn't far from my bedroom. The scratching was deliberate, rhythmic, not frantic like an animal, almost like testing. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept by my bed, a cheap one I bought at a thrift store for exactly this reason. Slowly, I crept toward the door. My heart was hammering so hard I could hear in my ears. I pressed my eye to the peephole and froze. A man was standing outside my apartment. He wasn't knocking. He wasn't pacing. He wasn't fumbling for keys. He was just standing there, perfectly still. His head was tilted slightly downward, so the top of his hood cast his face in shadow. But even through the fish-eyed distortion of the peephole, I could tell he was facing the door directly, facing me. For a long moment, I just stared, hoping maybe I was misinterpreting what I was seeing. But then, as if he could sense me watching, his lips curled into the faintest smile. I stumbled back from the door, my breath catching in my throat. The scratching stopped. Silence. Then the doorknob rattled, violently. It shook back and forth, metal clanging against metal, as if he was trying to force it open. My hands were trembling so hard I could barely keep hold of the bat. I whispered to myself, "Oh my God! Oh my God!" And then I did the only thing I could think of doing. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. The dispatcher's calm voice steadied me just enough to explain. Someone is trying to get into my apartment. She asked me for my address, for details. The whole time, the rattling continued. And then I heard something else. A whisper. I couldn't make out the words at first, so I pressed my ear against the door, heart pounding. The voice was low, raspy, almost taunting. But after a moment, I caught it. "I know you're in there, just let me in." My knees nearly gave out. I stumbled backward, clutching the phone like a lifeline, my other hand still wrapped around the bat. The dispatcher kept me talking, telling me officers were on their way, but every second stretched into eternity. The whispering continued, punctuated by the occasional rattle of a knob. Then silence again. I waited, straining my ears. Nothing. Summoning every ounce of courage, I peeked back through the peephole. He was still there, but this time he wasn't smiling. His face was pressed close to the peephole, one bloodshot eye staring directly into it. I yelped and stumbled back, nearly dropping my phone. My living room felt smaller, the walls pressing in. Minutes crawled by like hours until finally I heard footsteps in the hall, heavy, confident, then a loud knock. Police, open up. Relief crashed over me. I threw open the door, ready to collapse into their arms. But the hallway was empty. The officers looked around, checking corners, stairwells, even the roof access. Nothing. He was gone. Just gone. They took my statement, reassured me, and left. I thought that was the end of it. But the next day, the building manager called me. He said the police had reviewed the security footage from the hallway. What they found still chills me to this day. The man had been standing outside my door for nearly 40 minutes before I woke up. 40 minutes. Not moving, not pacing, just standing there, watching. And when he finally left, he didn't go toward the exit. He went deeper into the building. No one ever saw him leave. To this day, I don't know who he was or why he chose my door. But every time I hear a faint scratching sound, even now, I feel that same dread creeping back. And sometimes, late at night, I swear I still hear him whispering. Back in 2014, I lived in a small town, the kind of place where people didn't bother locking their doors, where neighbors wave at each other from porches, and where everyone knew everyone else's business. Crime was rare, almost unheard of, which was part of why my parents moved there when I was younger. For me, that sense of safety became second nature. Even late at night, when the streets were quiet and the shops downtown had long since closed, it never really occurred to me that something bad could happen. That's probably why I didn't think twice about walking home around 1 a.m. I had been to a friend's house just a few streets over. We'd been playing video games, laughing, losing track of time. When I finally checked the clock, it was well past midnight. My friend offered me his couch, but I shrugged it off. Nah, it's only a 20-minute walk, I said. That walk was one I'd done dozens of times before. Our town was small, compact, with familiar sidewalks and quiet parks. The air that night was crisp, carrying the faint scent of cut grass from earlier in the day. A few porch lights glowed here and there, but most houses were dark, their owners fast asleep. For the first 10 minutes, it was peaceful. My footsteps echoed in the stillness, the sound oddly comforting. I remember tilting my head back, looking up at the stars, something you could only really do in a town without much light pollution. But then, somewhere behind me, I heard it. Footsteps. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, the sound of my own steps bouncing back off a house. But when I slowed, they slowed. When I quickened my pace, they did too. My heart rate picked up. I glanced over my shoulder. About half a block back, under the dim glow of a street lamp, was a man. He was dressed in dark clothes, a hood pulled up, hands shoved deep into his pockets. Nothing about him screamed danger right away. Maybe just another late-night walker like me. But the way he matched my pace, the way he seemed fixed on me, set every nerve in my body on edge. I told myself not to panic. People walked at night. It wasn't a crime. I tried to focus on the rhythm of my steps, the cool air on my face, the fact that my house wasn't far. But no matter how much I tried to rationalize it, the truth gnawed at me. He was following me. I tested it. I slowed to a near stop, pretending to tie my shoe. When I glanced back, he had slowed too, lingering at the corner, waiting. I stood, pretending not to notice, and walked again. Sure enough, his steps resumed. My stomach twisted. By the time I reached the edge of the park, my nerves were shot. The park was a shortcut, a wide, grassy field with a winding path cutting through. During the day, it was full of kids playing and parents walking dogs. At night, it was just shadows and silence. I hesitated at the entrance. If I stayed on the main road, it would take longer to get home. If I cut through the park, I'd shave off 5 minutes. Behind me, the man's footsteps grew closer. I chose the park. The gravel path crunched beneath my sneakers, each step loud in the emptiness. The trees lining the park loomed tall and skeletal, their branches swaying gently in the breeze. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears, every sense straining. Halfway across, I risked a glance back. He was there, still following, not rushing, not running, just walking at that same steady pace, as though he had all the time in the world. My mouth went dry. I quickened my pace, nearly breaking into a jog. My footsteps echoed across the empty park, but no matter how fast I moved, I could still hear his. Steady, relentless. When I finally reached the other side of the park, I practically sprinted down the street toward my neighborhood. The familiar houses came into view, porch lights glowing faintly in the distance like beacons. Relief should have washed over me, but it didn't, because when I reached my driveway and turned back one last time, he was still there, standing at the edge of the street, not moving, not speaking, just watching me. I gripped my keys so tightly the metal bit into my palm. My voice cracked as I shouted, "What do you want?" The words echoed down the street, swallowed by the night. The man didn't answer. He didn't even flinch. After a long, tense pause, he took a single step backward, then another. Slowly, he retreated into the shadows until he disappeared from sight altogether. I stood frozen, my breath ragged, my chest tight, until I was sure he was gone. Only then did I fumble my key into the lock, slam the door shut behind me, and double-check every bolt. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house made me jolt. Every shadow outside my window felt like him, waiting. Days passed, then weeks, but the memory never faded. I never saw him again. No one ever reported a strange man wandering the streets. Sometimes I wondered if anyone else even noticed him at all. But even now, years later, when I walk alone at night, I can't shake it. That feeling, the steady rhythm of footsteps behind me, the certainty that someone is there, following just out of sight, and the thought that keeps me awake more than any other. What would have happened if I hadn't turned around? What if I had just kept walking, never acknowledging him at all? Would he still have followed me? Or would he have finally made his move?